Hey, my name is Patty Beck, and I live and garden in Zone 8A, Mississippi. Welcome to my YouTube channel, Patty B. Gardening. Yesterday, I made a post in the community tab of my YouTube channel, and I asked people to send me their gardening questions, and I will try to answer them best I can. Remember, I'm not a professional. I've just been doing this gardening business for about 3 years. And when I say gardening business, it means me just out here piddling around in my yard, making new flower beds, and going to the nursery and buying flowers and planting them. I have success and I have failures, and it's a learning experience, and I have learned a lot over the 3 years. So, for people who don't know anything about gardening, I might be able to help you out a little bit. Okay, the first question I have is from Joe, and he asks, what is your favorite plant, and what plant do you want to add to your garden next? All right, it's a two-part question. I love it. All right, and my answer is probably going to be about 3 or 4 parts because I'm a talker. But my favorite plant is, I broke it up into annuals, perennials, and shrubs. So the first one that I'm going to talk about is the perennials. My favorite perennial that I have is salvia. This is it right here. And I love it so much because it's cheap, it is hardy, it is drought resistant, it is heat tolerant, and it is deer resistant. The deer have not bothered it. Knock on wood. But yeah, I've just started these using the winter sowing method. I just bought a package of seeds and set the little seedlings out, and I have not done anything else to it. The foliage looks pretty all season long, all year long. It has these little blooms, have pollinators, bumblebees and everything, butterflies all over them the whole summer long. The deer don't eat it, and because it has kind of a scent, I guess, that the deer don't appreciate, and I'm glad about that. But yeah, I haven't had to do any kind of special watering, no fertilizing. It's just pretty much on its own, and you can't get much better than that in my book. Okay, the second answer to Joe Kelly's question, his question was, what's your favorite plant? So this is the annual favorite plant for me this year, and it is called Evolvulus. This variety is Blue Days Evolvulus. And I tell you what, this one absolutely, I've done nothing to it. I put it in the ground and that was it. I think I've given this water maybe 3 times. See, the water hose doesn't reach down here very well. So it's rained, a couple of times, and I've maybe supplemented with a little bit of water hose water 2 times. And it's just, no dead leaves. The green is such a pretty, it's kind of a blue-green color. The blooms are really like true blue color. They close up when it gets close to evening time, and they open up in the sunshine, in the mornings in the sunshine. But there's one, and here's one, and here's one. And I put them in this garden bed right here because this is a new garden bed. I just made it this spring, probably in May. But like it's a little bit distance from the water hose, so the water doesn't reach it real well. And it's right here by my driveway. So it has that hot concrete just, reflecting up on it. So it's pretty heat tolerant in that aspect. Okay, this is the third answer to Joe's question. What is my favorite shrub? Little lime hydrangea. Isn't it so pretty? golly, I could just sit here and look at those blooms all day. Whew. And this one is established enough to where it does not wither in the hot afternoon sun. This is I planted these little lime hydrangeas in, it was either April or May of 2020. And yeah, that's when it was. And this is July of 2024. So they're established, and I don't have to do all that much watering, and they can take the afternoon sun, and it's hot and humid in Mississippi. So if they do well here, Zone 8A, Mississippi, they'll probably do well anywhere. I just wanted to stand in front of them so you can see how big this one shrub is. And when I bought them, they were about this tall. And they've gotten this tall. They can do it. And I have 3 of them in this bed. If they can make it here, they'll make it anywhere. It's up to you. Hydrangea, hydrangea. Okay, this is the 4th answer to Joe's 2-part question. And it is, what plant do you want to plant next? And I want to plant, well, it may not be next because I don't know if I'll be able to find it, but I want to plant, it's a perennial shrub, I guess, but it's called Sun King Aurelia. And it is for the shade area, and it gets, it's just a foliage plant, a foliage perennial shrub. But it gets kind of a bright chartreuse green color, and I think that would just bring a bright pop into this kind of wooded shade garden area that I have going on here. I think I could put it in front of my little homemade fence, and it would be pretty, or I could put it over in that direction somewhere, like toward the swing set opening, or somewhere around the big oak tree, or maybe just dot them along the fence there. I think that would be so pretty. Hopefully, I'm keeping my fingers crossed, hopefully I can order them from somewhere and get them maybe here pretty soon. I'm going to give it a go. Okay, the second question is from Amanda, and she asks, what is your favorite fertilizer for flowers, and how do you apply it? Well, Amanda, my favorite fertilizer is probably, and it's an Espoma brand, it's an organic, and it's called Plant Tone. And it is just a, granular powder type stuff. It comes in a bag, and you use, I use it early spring, late winter, early spring, and I go around to my perennial plants and shrubs and just kind of work it in the mulch around the drip zone of the shrubs and right around the base of the perennials after I, can see that where they're coming up. And that's about all I do for those kinds. I've watched other YouTube channels, people who know a whole lot more than I do, like Jim Putnam from HortTube, and he does it one time. And see, that's the thing. When you have good soil, you don't have to do all that fertilizing. What the plants need is already there in your soil. And I'm working on my soil. It's a work in progress, my soil is. But one thing that makes your soil better, and, well, I'll save that for another question because that's on down the list here. But, so I use the Espoma Plant Tone fertilizer, and I use it around I'll even use it around my annuals too. But now annual flowers, they do well using a water-soluble fertilizer, like once a week or every 10 days. Now mine don't get that, and would probably look a whole lot better if I would give them a little food like that about once a week every 10 days. With an annual flower, it does everything all in one year. It does its blooming, its big show, and it will bloom all year for you. And it would appreciate having some food to be able to do that. I'm pretty good about keeping my stuff watered, but I'm not so great about fertilizing my annuals. In fact, I think I've only fertilized mine one time this year, and I just used Miracle Grow, that you put in your water and it dissolves in the water and you pour it in your pots. And, things look okay, but they would probably be blooming a whole lot better if I would feed them more. Those annuals, they do a lot, and I imagine they get hungry. And I'm just not on it about feeding them as I should, and I'm going to try to do better. That's on the list, to do better. But that's what I use, Amanda. That's probably my favorite perennial and shrub fertilizer, and then I can't say what my favorite is with the annuals because I really don't do anything. But you should. I know that a lot of people use, it's a water-soluble fertilizer, and it's put out by Proven Winners. It's just called Proven Winners Water-Soluble Fertilizer. And like a couple of the major gardening YouTube channels, they'll water their plants with that once a week or once every 10 days. And I tell you, their gardens do look mighty fine. Yeah, but they have easy access to the product, and I'm sure they have more money than I do too. So, moving right along with the questions. This question comes from someone named Susanna, and her question is, what does bolting look like, and can it be prevented by pruning in certain flowers and herbs? Susanna, that's a good question. I never knew what bolting was until I started growing these flowers about 3 or 4 years ago. And what I knew about bolting was if somebody was getting out of somewhere really fast, they were bolting. Yeah. Getting out of there quick and not going to be there anymore. That's what I thought bolting was. But actually, with annuals, flowers that plants that only live 1 year, I'm going to have to go get in a more comfortable position. But this is what bolting looks like. It's when you have a leafy plant and it begins to get a long, skinny stem, and then it will shoot up what is going to be a flower, and then that flower will go to seed. That is called bolting. Now let me go get in a more comfortable position, and we'll talk more about it. But before I do that, let me show you what I'm going to do with this. This is coleus. Okay. There's the little beginning of the flowering. So I cut that back, and with this coleus, I'm going to take it down a little bit further to where there are 2 stems coming off of it, and it'll thicken up. This coleus will thicken up and get bushier since I've done that. Now let me go get more comfortable. Bolting, that's what we're talking about. Bolting, when a plant bolts. And most often you see it, well, I guess all the time you see it in plants that are, I made a few notes here, in non-fruiting plants, like plants that don't produce fruit, like the coleus, or it happens with leafy green vegetables like lettuce and kale, and it can happen with herbs like basil, and I guess all of them, the ones that don't produce a fruit. Now, let me tell you, and I never thought about this either until I was a grown woman, like 48, 49 years old. So it's been a couple of years ago. But plants want to leave something behind here on this earth. They want to reproduce. It's just in their DNA, and they want to make sure that there's a little something of them left behind on this earth after they're gone. So how do they do that? They do that through seed production. And this is so crazy and wild. And once that you can, grasp this, you'll be amazed. Will be amazed. But that little old bitty seed, you plant it, and it knows, the DNA in that seed knows that it's going to grow, and it knows when to grow, and it takes all of the sunshine and the carbon dioxide and water and nutrients from the soil, and it grows a plant. And the plant does what it's going to do. If it's like lettuce, it produces all the good lettuce leaves that we like to eat. And most of the time, this happens when it's a little bit cooler. This bolting occurs most of the time with cool season crops. Well, when the weather gets warmer and when the days get longer, and also probably like when there's less water, so when the plants begin to get under these stressful situations, something happens to them, and they say to themselves, oh my gosh, my time is drawing short here on this earth, and I want to leave a little something behind of myself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a whole lot of energy into making a flower. And then that flower is going to set seed. And then that seed will drop onto the ground, and there will be little pieces of me left around for the next generation, or to be a next generation. Now, that's what the plant is saying to itself. And so when the days get longer, there's more sunshine, and probably less water, because it's summertime and the temperatures are hot, the plants will begin to bolt. And when they do that, they put a whole lot of energy into making the flower and the seed, and less energy into making their leaves that we like to eat edible, and they turn bitter. Now, I've watched a few videos about this, and after the plant has bolted, or when the conditions are right for the plant to bolt, if you're going to eat it, I don't think there's a whole lot that you can do to keep it from being bitter. I mean, you can snap the flower stalk off, but I think once that plant knows that it's time to be trying to make seeds to reproduce itself, it's just in the mindset of we're going to make seeds and use our energy to make seeds, and they taste bitter. Now, there's some things that people have done to kind of trick the plant and to think that it's not bolting under those conditions, and one of them is to keep it well watered, have the moisture readily available there for it, maybe actually mist the leaves with water so they don't get as hot. And then another thing that I have heard people say is that they would put like a shade cloth over their, say, lettuce crop, so they're not getting so much sunshine, so the plant is not thinking, oh, I'm getting all this sunshine, it's time for me to bolt. So they'll be in a little more shade, and they'll be able to produce good edible leaves. Now, it seems like that I may have seen a video somewhere where somebody says, and after the leaves start taking bitter, you can do something with them like this and make them edible, but I don't know about that. I grew some lettuce one time, and when it bolted, I tried to make a salad out of it. Oh my gosh, it was so bitter, nobody could eat it. I don't even think the rabbits wanted it. So I think when things bolt, we might as well just, say that it's time to move on to a different crop. I hope that didn't confuse you too much. But isn't that just amazing how that plant knows through the conditions and the sun and the water and the just the environment that it's in, and it triggers that plant to try to reproduce itself through seeds. I think that's fascinating. Okay, the next question on the list is from Cooper. And his question is, do you use landscape fabric in your flower beds? Cooper, I'm going to have to tell you, not no, but heck no. About 22, 23 years ago, we had this flower bed that I'm squatting in right now, landscaped. And that was, back in the day, I didn't know any better. I was young, I was having kids, I just didn't spend a whole lot of time out in the yard piddling around. It was all about business and taking care of the babies and all that stuff. We would cut the grass and it would look nice, and we had somebody come and landscape this area for us, and it looked good. And they put down this landscape fabric. If you see this black right here, this is that black landscape fabric, and it is absolutely tough as nails. I'm telling you, tough as nails. And they planted some things in here, and it looked all good and everything, and we would mulch on top of it, to cover this landscape fabric up. And through the years, as our kids, got more active, well, I forgot all about this flower bed over here. And the leaves off of that magnolia tree would fall, like you see around here right now, except we never did get out here to rake them out. We would rake them out maybe one time a year, but they would just pile up and pile up and pile up, and then those leaves would break down, and it just made the best compost for weed seeds to grow into and germinate and grow right on top of this landscape fabric. So I had the best crop of weeds right on top of the landscape fabric that you've ever seen. And so then a couple of years ago, about 3 or 4 years ago, when I decided that I was going to be a gardener, I said, I'm going to start in that shade garden area. Forgot that there was even landscape fabric down here, and started, got the leaves out, blew the leaves out, was trying to clean it up, and started trying to dig, and came across the landscape fabric. And I would try to cut some of it out. It is covering this entire bed. So I would just cut an X in it and dig a hole in that X in the ground and plant my plant. Well, let me tell you what. As I was trying to dig through the landscape fabric to plant my plants, I came upon the worst looking soil I've ever seen in my life. Not only did it look malnourished, the soil looked malnourished. There was not the first sign of a worm, no insects. The soil was gray in color. It would not retain water. It was almost like it was hydrophobic. It was just not a good situation. So I thought to myself, I really need to get this landscape fabric out of here. Well, I made a start. I made an attempt and I got about a quarter of the way down. And I am going to get all of it. It's just going to take a little more time. Maybe I'll pick it up again this fall when it cools off a little bit. But I just really think that the landscape, although the water can pass through the landscape fabric to, soak into the earth below it, the breakdown of the leaves and the bark and the mulch, all of those things break down and enrich your soil with goodness, good organic material. And if it's just sitting right on top of that landscape fabric, it's not going to get down into your soil where your roots are. So I really don't recommend landscape fabric. I think that you can, like what I'm going to do with my new garden bed over there is I put the cardboard down to smother out the grass, and it will break down over time. That cardboard will break down over time. And then I'll plant my plants, and then I'll mulch on top of that. So the ground will receive the nutrients from the breakdown of the cardboard and the breakdown of the mulch and feed the soil. And then the soil will be able to feed my plants. But now, until that happens, I will have to use fertilizer. So, but yes, I do not recommend landscape fabric. But if you want to use it, that is all fine and good because it's your garden, it's your yard, it's your flower beds, and if that's what you want to do, then I am proud of you for it. But as for me and my house, we will not be using the landscape fabric anymore. Rebel wants to be in on this question. He wants to answer this question with me. Okay, and for the last question in this installment of questions and answers with Patty B. Gardening, this question comes from Bailey. And Bailey's question is, do you prefer mulch or pine straw in your flower beds, and why? Bailey, that's a very good question. And mulch and pine straw are both wonderful things. The reason that we use mulch and pine straw in our flower beds, well, it's multiple reasons. Number one is that they suppress weeds. You don't want weeds growing up in your flower beds like this right here. Well, this isn't a weed. That's a dead snapdragon right there. So not necessarily a weed. But like in this little section right here, we have it mulched with, we use pine bark mulch. Well, no, not pine bark. I think it was like the shredded hardwood mulch is what we used, just bags of it. And we put it in the flower bed here. And, it breaks down over time, but it suppresses the weeds. So you don't have weeds growing all up in your flowers, in your pretty flowers. So that's the first thing that they do. Pine straw and mulch, they both suppress the weeds. Another thing that they do is that they help keep the moisture around your plants. Keep the moisture from evaporating. Like in the hot summertime, when it's so hot outside and you water your plants and then the next thing you know, the ground is dry again because it's just evaporated. And, well, the mulch and pine straw too, I guess, help to keep your plants retain the water, keep it from evaporating. Another thing that they do is that they insulate the roots of your plants. In the hot summertime, the roots are just, these roots on these impatiens, they don't go like way deep in the ground. They're pretty much right there on the surface of the ground, right under the ground. And so those roots could get too hot if the sun gets on them. So the mulch will act as sort of a sun protectant for the roots too. And a big reason that if you can't tell, I prefer mulch. I prefer, um, and I will use pine bark mulch, but I really prefer like the shredded hardwood mulch. That's my favorite. That shredded hardwood mulch will break down over time, and it will um, create nutrients for your soil. It's a good organic material, and it's just like in the forest. If you go out in the woods where trees fall and break down, that's some of the best soil you'll ever find. And so that's what I'm trying to recreate in my flower beds, is just what you would find out in nature. Um, and I like the way that pine straw looks, especially after it's first put out. It looks all fluffy and everything. But it seems to me like the sun would be able to get through those little fronds of the pine straw, and weeds would be able to grow through it easier. I'm not sure about all that. And I don't know how well pine straw will break down and, help renew your soil. I don't know about that either. But I do know that the shredded hardwood mulch does all the above. And it looks good too. It looks good too. And if you put a good, couple of inches in your flower beds of the mulch, you don't have to do that every year. You can just do it like once every 2 or 3 years. And then to maybe kind of, fluff it up at the beginning of the spring, kind of, rake it up a little bit, make it look good. And you can add another bag or two in places where it may be looking a little shallow, but you don't have to do a complete mulch every year. In fact, your plants probably don't need it. It may be to the detriment of your plants if you just do a big old 3-inch mulch every single year. But anyway, yeah, that was the last question, and it was a good question. I appreciate it. All the questions were good. I had to sit and think about them and do a little research. Made me a better gardener. And I hope that y'all watching this will be better gardeners too. Look, why don't y'all do me a favor? Why don't y'all hit that subscribe button on the channel there and give me a thumbs up if you liked my goings on, if you like this saga of the question and answers. I thought it was a lot of fun. So y'all shoot me some questions in the comments, and maybe I'll do this a little more often. Wouldn't that be fun? All right, y'all have a good night. Bye-bye.